Women were especially prominent in food riots in French marketplaces, although men dominated those in the countryside. The most momentous French food riot was the Women's March on Versailles. This occurred in October 1789, when the market women of Paris began calling the men cowards, and declaring, "We will take over." These women proceeded to march to Versailles with soldiers following them. This crowd then forced the king to return to Paris where, 3 years later, women were again major participants in the demonstrations that led to the abolition of the monarchy. As a police inspector said in 1793, "It is mainly the women who are stirred up. Women who in turn communicate all their frenzy to the men, heating them up with their seditious propositions and stimulating the most violent effervescence." Meanwhile, women in the countryside initiated counter-revolutionary protests against the new government's policies of the repression of the church and the conscription of male peasants into the army. During the French Revolution, women lead the fight for religion. Their fight would lead the way for the feminization of religions. Women felt that they were one responsible for maintaining a spiritual balance within their family. They fought harder than their male counterparts, invoking violent and illegal actions sometimes to get their voices heard. If women were ever arrested, the males in their lives would downplay the damage they could do and were also seen as more hysterical and vulnerable as a whole. So society never thought much of their violent and illegal actions. But if a woman refused or avoided taking part in petitions or marches, she would be shamed until guilted into taking part. The women during the French Revolution also fought for their own rights. Aristocratic women were not as likely to partake in the activities that could ruin their family and/or their chance of inheriting the family fortune, or what she would receive. So they were reluctant to participate. Working-class women also faced this dilemma. But because they were already the suppressed class, the good of what they could achieve outweighed the loss of family pride and/or fortune. Louis XVI had allowed all people who paid taxes to vote. But since women could not pay taxes, they could not vote. While the Third Estate made rules, women would present their opinions through pamphlets and petitions to let the Third Estate know what they wanted. Pétition des femmes d'Utiers état au roi stated that women wanted education to go beyond French and Latin for church, more jobs to be available to women, and to raise the max pay of 5 to 6 sous. Motion en faveur du sexe and discours préliminaire de la pauvre vote focused on dowries and marriage. In the working class, finding a job was hard enough for men, harder for women, and saving enough money to get married was almost impossible. Women didn't want to have to pay a dowry to get married. This applied only in the Third Estate. The Rights of Woman by Olympe de Gouges was a complete pamphlet that stated all the rights that women should have. It was copied almost word for word from the Declaration of the Rights of Man, but applied to women. A booklet, Griefs et plaintes des femmes mal mariées, placed criticism on marriage laws oppressing women into submission to their male counterpart and demanded the legalization of divorce. In the sector of bourgeoises, Madame Etta Palm van Aelde was a leading figure in fighting to women's rights. She demanded for the equal right to an education, political freedom, divorce and legality of women of age 21 and over, while political freedom would not be gained until after the revolution. All other demands would be met in some way. In August 1792, women of the age of 21 and above were given legal freedom from their parents. In September 1792, women were granted the right to divorce and the law of 1794 eased the divorce process. Educational programs were advanced and allowed women to be trained for careers in the work field. But they still did not obtain equality. Female teachers were paid less than males and primary school classes were divided by gender. By the end of the advancements and improvements in the educational system, the women weren't much better off than before. R.B. Rose argues that despite the efforts of women during the revolution, little changed. The revolution was a revolution for the men, and a place of chaos for the women. The French Revolutionary Constitution of 1791 allowed women to be labeled as citizens, but nothing else than that. They still didn't have voting rights or the ability to run for office. The Napoleonic Law of 1804 suppressed wives into submission to their husbands, reversing all equality demands made during the revolution. Women still couldn't own land because they couldn't legally sign any contract, putting the land into the hands of her closest masculine relative figure.